Hello, and welcome to another episode of Emotional Eating Unwrapped. I'm your host, Alana Kessler, and today we're going to talk about connecting to your purpose to transform the way that you eat. And this is a really personal topic for me because I started emotionally eating and binging and using food, just using food as a coping mechanism, um since I was really young. And when I look back, I look back and I notice that when I started emotionally eating and when I would turn to food for that, it would be because I felt disconnected from my own self-trust. I felt disconnected from trusting other people. And the thing is, for me, like I said, it started so young. It started when I was about 16 years old. So when you're so young, it's really hard to know yourself. It's not really that realistic for someone to tell a 16-year-old or a teenager to connect to your purpose. It's like, what does that mean? So, the idea of connecting to your purpose to transform the way you eat, to transform your relationship with addictive patterns with food is something that I learned through my own personal journey healing from emotional eating. And so thinking back to when I was young and when I was really starting this relationship with food that ended up being something that I struggled with for, the better part of 15 years. I think back and I realized that it was definitely an anchor that I used to help me feel grounded and not even so much the food. And because definitely the flavor of the food, the taste of the food, the consistency of the food, the mouth feel, right? All that stuff is for sure part of it. But so much of it was really about the act of eating itself. And I talk about this so much that there's a difference between food and eating. And food is one thing, right? It gives you a sensual type of experience, but the act of eating can really, when you feel so disconnected from yourself, from your purpose, from your self-trust, from your connection to yourself, to the people around you, you have this sense of, who do I belong to? What do I belong to? Kind of have this almost suspended reality. And I'm speaking to you, and I'm also speaking to myself, like thinking about how I felt, not only as a teenager when this started for me, but even as a young adult. And as I really found myself navigating the journey of healing from emotional eating, I really remember different points in time where the act of eating itself was anchor for me. It gave me a sense of purpose. It gave me a place to put my anxious energy, which I feel like when push comes to shove, this is what we're doing when we're emotionally eating. We have this, as humans, we have this energy that builds up inside of us, and we can call it feelings, we can call it emotions, we can call it anything, but it's kinetic energy. It feels like it's alive energy. And when we don't feel a sense of self, when we don't feel that, we we still need a place to feel almost like we're grounded, we're anchored, we're living. And oftentimes food and the act of eating can provide that. And it stayed this way for me for so many years. Like I said, the better part of, a decade basically. Until obviously, where, obviously now I'm speaking to you from this place where I support people in overcoming this. But for so many years, I used food as that place to park a lot of my anxious energy, to get it out, to feel like I was doing something, I was productive, I had a purpose. And it went on like this until I started to build up my sense of self and my authentic identity. And this is so key. And when we talk about connecting to your purpose to transform the way you eat, this is what I mean. It's connecting to your sense of self, it's connecting to your authentic identity. And the thing is uncover and discover your authentic identity. It comes through action. And it comes through connecting to your values. And oftentimes you don't know what your values are until you have them disrespected. So, such a big part of this is going out in the world and living in the world. I know for myself, as a food addict for so many years, we kind of live on the sidelines. I kind of lived on the sidelines. There were feelings I had inside of yearning, of wanting to do stuff, but I wouldn't do it. And I would be, in my apartment or in my house, eating my food, putting all my energy in the eating experience, and imagining myself going out and doing stuff once I could get over this situation with food. And the thing is that it really doesn't happen that way. You have to put yourself into the world, and there's this place in the journey where there's this overlap time where, in order to get to the place where you can uncover and become your authentic self, which can be that anchoring presence that you need to plug into to overcome and transform the way that you eat, there's this overlap point where you're not quite that person yet, but you still have to muster up the energy and the courage and the enthusiasm to go out into the world and try different things so you can get feedback, so you can figure out who you are and what you love and what you like to do, and continue to invest and pour more of your energy and more of your time and more of your resources into doing those things. And that's essentially what I did. And there was a time where both things were happening at once. I was committed to going to daily yoga classes. I went on solo vacations. I put tons of effort into actually going to places and meeting new people that were in line with things that interested me. Right? Like, I started joining hiking groups in New York City, and on the weekends I would go hiking with strangers. And the truth is, I met really good people there. I met some of my great friends in those years of my life, and they connected me to other things. And it really helped me build my authentic identity. And through every experience that I put myself out there, I got more feedback into what mattered to me, what were my values, what were my needs, because I was out in the world and I was doing stuff. And there were a couple years in that time where I was still, struggling with my relationship with food. So it didn't just happen overnight where I started to do this stuff and it compensated for or replaced my behaviors with my food addiction. It didn't. I'm not going to lie about that, right? It doesn't just happen like that. There are years and there are times, for me it took years, for my clients, it takes months, at this point. But there is an overlap where you are going to be both until you become your authentic self. And this is when this great thing starts to happen, because consistency and just courage and continuing to go out there with this idea of becoming wise about yourself, right? It's not just going out there and crossing your fingers and hoping that you become your authentic self and it all just happens for you. You have to go out into these experiences looking for feedback to understand yourself better. And that is a key point that you can't overlook, right? Just going out there and just putting yourself out there without that light switch turned on, reflection and filtering, and that curiosity, where you're basically like, okay, I'm gonna try to gather information about what are my values, what are my needs, um, you know, what do I want to do more of, and these small actions were so major for me because these small actions became bigger investments in myself and helped me create a life of meaning. And and my life unfolded, right? This action led to this relationship, which led to this connection, which led to this investment of energy, which led to this feeling of purpose, right? And then I committed more, and it just kind of snowballed on itself. But it all starts with you just putting yourself out there, right? While you're sitting there at home, I know that you have a burning desire inside of you where you're just sitting there and it's like this little flame that's like, oh man, I'd really love to do that. But you don't do it because for some reason it doesn't feel like it's big enough yet for you to invest your energy and time in. I'm telling you right now, just do it. Right? Like if you're sitting there and being like, oh, I'd love to go horseback riding, or I'd love to just go for hikes, just start. I'd love to go on this vacation, or I'd love to go to this location, and maybe you don't have anyone to go with you. Just go. Right? Join a group that's going. And you never know where that's going to lead, especially if you go in with the openness to find a place for it to lead. And I think that was for me too. Like I always went into these experiences and these places and these moments where I invested my time and my energy. I always went in looking for that next door that I'm going to open. And that's how I created and built this purposeful life that has helped me feel the most self-trust, the most connected, the most worthy, to be honest, and helped me feel like I belonged and really released me from needing to use food and eating as my anchor, or needing to turn to eating as a place for me to put my energy, that anxious energy, which I still have. Right? I still have this anxious energy, but now, I feel the energy and I come record a podcast, right? I go and I do something else. And it doesn't always have to be productive like that. Sometimes it's just, going for a walk, or sometimes it's just doing nothing and just being able to sit with that heightened sensation of energy that lives inside of us. But it always helps me when now I think about when now I can, if I want to, I can resource different places that I feel connected to from a purpose and a deep purpose meaning place. And I can plug into that, whether that's a book, whether that's recording something, whether that's playing piano, whether that's, doing a class or meditate or something that aligns with what I have learned is my purpose. And I can plug into that. And it helps me to not have to turn to eating as the only way that I can feel like I'm a real person. I know that sounds might sound a little bit out there, but like that's really how it felt back then. Right? It was like as humans, we all just want to feel real. And eating did that for me as a teenager. Eating did that for me as a young adult. Now I feel like a real person because I'm connected to my authentic identity. And I have a lot of behaviors and actions and places to plug into when I need to remind myself that I am a real person and I do have impact in the world and I do matter. And I think that that is super, super important and super valuable when it comes to healing food addiction, emotional eating, and, creating that sense of self that we really want, that we often think comes from just losing weight or being skinny or thin or like looking a certain way. Now that, like I said, that helps. And I think that's really, really important. That's something to, we want to look and feel our best so that we can have our self-esteem, not our self-worth, but our self-esteem feel high, so that we feel, that we feel unburdened and completely unleashed to be our full expressive selves. But connecting to your authentic identity, that's huge. And so I just want you to think about that, right? I want you to think about what really lights you up, right? What, when you are finding yourself emotionally eating, and if you're listening to this podcast, and that is still something that you are, um, and that is something that you are struggling with, which most people that are listening to this podcast are, you might think that it has to do with food. You might be listening looking for food tips or eating tips, but I think this is a huge one, right? Notice when you find yourself turning to eating as an activity to make you feel connected to something, to life. Ask yourself whether there's something, ask yourself whether there's something in your life that's not aligned. Ask yourself whether you're living your life in a certain way that's not aligned to your purpose. Ask yourself if you know what your purpose is, right? Do you know what that is? And if you don't know what that is, then my advice would be to listen to the tiny little voice that inside that says, I would love to do that thing, and just follow that, because that can lead to another opportunity, to another door, like I said, to another relationship, to something that opens you up to your purpose. I'm not sure if I could think that what I do now was my purpose back then. I don't know. It unfolded in a way because I followed a certain thread. And that's really what I'm inviting you to do today. And when you do find yourself connected to your purpose, it will act as a beacon. It will really act as a beacon in times of doubt, in times of discomfort. And it will give you that sense of relaxation, of belonging that we all just really want to feel. And it will start acting like a home base for a lot of your choices. And it will also give you that sense of security, just knowing that you know yourself and that it's there. So, on that note, thank you so much for joining me again today for another episode of Emotional Eating Unwrapped. And if today's episode resonated with you, please join me again next week with another new episode so you can fall in love with eating, start losing weight, keep it off with sustainable strategies and lasting change. Please like, share, subscribe, leave a review. Just keep spreading the word of this podcast to anybody you feel might benefit from this empowering knowledge. I have lots of free resources on my website to support you on your journey to loving food, losing weight. Just go to www.bewellbyak.com. And until next time, I'm Alana, and thank you for listening to Emotional Eating Unwrapped.